Now, the Minister of State for Education, Godbless Otubure, has said about 31% of the adult population in Nigeria are illiterate. During a ministerial briefing, the minister said the statistics dropped from 38% in 2015. Now, the International Literacy Day 2022 is marked every 8th of September. Now, the theme for 2022 is transforming literacy, learning spaces, exploring opportunities and possibilities. The Minister of State says the theme for the year gives an opportunity to rethink the fundamental importance of literacy, learning spaces to build resilience and ensure quality, equitable and inclusive education for all. And joining us in the studio to discuss this and other issues is Taiwo Akerele, who is the Executive Director of Policy House International, a CSO with interest in the education sector. He's also a former Chief of Staff to the Edo State Government. Also here with us in the studio is the Founder and Chief Executive Officer of ReadyToLeadAfrica, an NGO with interest in the education sector. And his name is Godbless Otubure. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming. And Taiwo, let's start with you about this International Literacy Day. What exactly is wrong with us as a country that we are not catching up in terms of expanding the frontiers of literacy in the country?
Thank you very much, Soma, and thank you for having us. As you rightly stated, there are challenges in the educational sector. And globally, governments across the world grapple on an annual basis to ensure that the educational system is on the right path. Illiteracy is a major issue that is besetting development and human capital development all over the world. While other continents like Asia, South America, North America, and of course Europe have invested significantly in the educational system, including introducing technology, reviewing the pedagogy, reviewing curriculum on a periodic basis, and of course investing in infrastructure. It seems as though that the African continent is sleeping on all of these components I mentioned below. It is on the basis of this that Africa accounts for almost 34% of global illiteracy figures worldwide, as against Asia, which is still about 2%. So it's a reflection of the level of priority and prioritization of government at all levels. Now, coming to Nigeria, in addition to the number of adults that are illiterates, Nigeria is also having the twin problem of out-of-school children. In the last 5 years, this figure has grown from 5 million to 7 million to 10 million. And recently, UNESCO, as widely reported, stated that Nigerian out-of-school children is now 20.2 million young people. So that on its own is a tragedy. It's a tragedy and also a security challenge. But the key question before us today is, what are we doing with our educational budgeting system over the years? Why is it that our appropriation system is not impacting on the results? Why is infrastructure failing in the educational system? Why do we have so many children that are out of school? And why is the numbers so much in Northwest and Northeastern Nigeria? Is there a relationship between spending and investment? Is there a relationship between social traditions, culture? So these are some of the issues that dominated, today's program that was attended by stakeholders from all across.
On rethinking investment in the education sector in Nigeria.
Yes.
Thank you for that perspective. Now, God bless. Let's talk about why it's important for us to have both CSOs, the private sector, to help in pushing for a literate society.
You cannot have a functioning society without people being literate. That's the fundamental. It is a tragedy to say, just look at the numbers. And then you wonder why people are into banditry and why people are into crimes, why you figure out that the average Nigerian graduate who is getting into the world of work is unproductive, or use the word unemployable. It is simply because we're not investing in education. So for CSOs and private institutions, if you don't have the people that are able to just read and write and interact with information in a way that it becomes productive, what you have is a deficient society, and it pays no one if you have a large number of people who are illiterate compared to when you have a larger population that are literate and are able to interact with information that leads to productivity. So it is in everyone's best interest that society is better educated, that we have young people who are going to school. I think the Akbar builds a strategy in Akwa Ibom where it became almost criminal if your child was not in school. Right, I think that should be implemented nationally,
especially with 20 million adult school children. That's like the population of some countries. That we see around. Okay, Taiwo, when we talk about literacy here, do we mean only the ability to speak English language? I mean, there are people who are literate in Hausa, Arabic, Yoruba, Igbo, and so many other languages in the country. Would you refer to those people as illiterates?
No, I don't. I don't belong to the school of thought that you must necessarily be in a four-wall of a regulated environment and be certificated before you can be regarded as a literate person. However, there must be regulation. Everybody who needs to learn something must come under the radar of government. So the question right now is, those who are not in the four walls of schools that are formally recognized, who is teaching them? And what type of pedagogy, what type of curriculum are they being taught? And how impactful are they to the economy? What value will they add to the productive sector of the economy? How do we, monitor the outcome of things that they are being taught? For example, I always tell people that, yes, we have so many kids that are out of school, but in real terms, they are not out of school, quote and unquote, because they are learning under people on a daily basis. What are they learning? That is where government should take interest in. It's not necessarily, yes, it's good for you to make it compulsory for people to be in school, but what are you doing in terms of monitoring and evaluation, in terms of the outcome of the pedagogy, in terms of the outcome of the curriculum, and how do you mainstream that into the formal economy? For instance, somebody has gone to learn something, maybe Arabic or Yoruba language and all of that. How do you mainstream that into the economy, into the productive sector of the economy? How do you calculate the impact of such education on GDP, on unemployment, on productivity, on manufacturing, on general issues around the economy? So these are some of the issues we are trying to grapple. So the government has to come up with a strategy to capture those who are not formally in the four walls of schools and those who are also in the four walls of schools, to ensure that they are properly mainstreamed, to ensure that they don't it doesn't affect our security, it doesn't affect our economy negatively, and that there's a proper monitoring to ensure that their value is properly calculated. And at the end of the day, everybody will be mainstream into the formal economy. Let me in addition to that, the annual budget that we normally budget for education, whether state, federal, and local government, how do we calculate the impact on the economy, the impact on the educational system? These are some of the issues. And as we speak today, primary education system in Nigeria is not properly organized. For example, the local government have their role to play, the state have their role to play, the federal government have their role to play. There is UBEC. Now, who is taking charge? Who is leading?
Isn't it supposed to be UBEC and SUBEBs, which we have at the moment?
Yet the local government also has a role in terms of payment of salary of teachers. So if the local government system that we all know today does not have the capacity to pay the teacher salary, how the infrastructure provided by UBEC is useless. So there has to be a streamlined national policy that properly, communicate who is leading the educational paradigm of Nigeria educational system, to ensure that we have results, to ensure that the M&E system is streamlined in such a way that everybody is accounted for when it comes to
evaluation.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about the issues of investment. What sort of investments would you say is necessary at the moment to help propel better literacy and then improve our ratings internationally?
I mean, for me, I'm a big believer in infrastructure, educational infrastructure. I mean, when you look at the way we build our schools alone, it's enough to turn off a lot of children from going to school. So if you ask me, I'd say that we need to invest massively in infrastructure upgrade, because I say this because I've studied a bit of what other countries are doing when it comes to infrastructure upgrade and how that investment inspires young people to come to learn. I was in a school in Charlottesville in the US. I mean, the school has been built. They were going to upgrade the laboratory of that school.
Is it the primary or secondary school? Okay.
No, it's secondary school. Yeah, that's secondary school. They were going to upgrade just the laboratory of that school, and they spent $20 million just to do that. Now, when kids come to a place where what they see inspires them, the curiosity to learn is increased. But when children, all they see is just 6 blocks classroom, no playground,
empty and
just,
all of that,
just empty,
and just seats,
no library, nothing grabs their attention, nothing inspires curiosity. You cannot have that sort of learning happening. Now, infrastructure alone, without the necessary manpower, curriculum change, the teaching learning process, and all of that, would still lead to nothing. But if you ask me, I believe that the first thing we must do, which is what I said today at the World Literacy program that Policy House organized, was that it has to be a criminal offense moving forward that somebody will build just 6 blocks classroom and say that is a constituency project, or that is a project that you're coming to commission. Because the politicians who build 6 blocks classroom, their kids don't go to those schools. So it's clear that they are clearly not willing to educate their people. So let's work with...
Even with those little intentions,
yeah.
I mean, intents and all of that.
Because just watch, Sambo, look at this. You build a school that children will go to. Your kids can go there. See where it gets funny. No playground, no proper football pitch, no volleyball.
Place for physical and health exercises.
Then you send us later to go to the Olympics, and you wonder why we are not performing. We're not performing because you have not created the room for the overall development of that child.
All right, and I bring you back, Taiwo, very quickly as we try to round off this conversation. The elections are coming pretty soon now. What sort of investments would you be advising the presidential candidates to look into, including the state governors, because we mustn't leave them out of this conversation? What sort of policies do you think that they can propose to the electorate and for the electorate to screen and see that could actually help to improve Nigeria's ratings in terms of investment in education?
Thank you very much for that question. In our engagement with government in the last 5 years, we've told them, yes, UNESCO recommends 26% annual spending on education. The annual spending has to do with teacher training, curriculum, pedagogy, infrastructure, and of course, general school feeding and all of those things. However, it's always very difficult politically to take such decisions all over the world. In fact, most countries have now, mainstreamed their budget for education into their GDP. They've gone beyond just annual budget. They look at the entire GDP of the country and say 10% of our GDP is earmarked. And Japan, Singapore, that's what they've been doing, and you can see the progress they are making. However, in Nigeria, what we have is inconsistency in government policies. A government comes in, he invests 5% on education, out of which only 35% cash releases and backup and backing. Another government comes in, they increase it to 10% net, but at the end of the day, 20% actual cash releases. So that is why you see the floppy nature of our educational system. So going forward, there must be a national consensus on the minimum standard for appropriation in the educational system. If we must catch up with what is happening globally in terms of technology, in terms of pedagogy. So the presidential candidate must be held responsible. As we are inching towards campaign, Nigerians must ask the presidential candidates to make a commitment on how much, irrespective of the total budget for the year, there must be a percentage over the next 4 to 8 years that must be earmarked for education. It must be signed into law, so that on an annual basis, you are sure that out of 1 trillion naira that you have budgeted for the country, 100 billion, which is 10%, is going into education, out of which a percentage of it must be for infrastructure, a percentage must be for teacher training, a percentage must be for school feeding, a percentage must be for curriculum review, and all of those components that constitute the educational system. So let us not just jump into political campaigns without holding the candidates responsible.
Yeah,
because it also has implication for security.
Aspect.
It has implication for security. It has implication for immigration. It has implication for skill acquisition.
Yeah.
And of course, the quality of people we are sending abroad, you know, for all of those. So that's the kind of commitment I want.
Very important point you've raised. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time left. Let's say 30 seconds.
I mean, it's you know, it's part of the conversation we'll be having in New York on this issue of education, especially with regards to the candidates. Any candidate that is not showing interest in education, I am saying now, Nigerians don't vote for any candidate that are not showing interest in education. No,
that's a very, very strong perspective.
Yes,
and of course, I would add that it should be a question to the presidential candidates. This way, I mean, how do you intend to educate our children if you become president? Because, I mean, these are very, very important things. You have mentioned something about how people go out of the country and their literacy level is questioned here and there. I mean, it questions what we do with our citizens right here in the country. And I think it will be a very good conversation if the presidential candidates can take a look at that, on how they intend to educate our children if they get into power. We must thank you so much, Taiwo Akerele, who is the Executive Director of Policy House International, a CSO with interest in the education sector. He's also a former Chief of Staff to the Edo State government. And of course, we've had Godbless Otubure, who is the Chief Executive Officer of ReadyToLeadAfrica, an NGO with interest in the education sector. Well, that has been on this edition of the Arise interview. Do join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja. Goodbye, and thank you for watching. I'm Somna Samuel.